Welcome back to the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, episode 43. This month's selection was The Day the Earth Stood Still from 1951, directed by Robert Wise and starring Michael Rennie, Patricia Neal, Billy Gray, and Locke Martin. And like I said in the video, this is kind of a quintessential, mandatory science fiction film. I mean, really, there were films before it. There were a lot of films after it, but there are very few that I believe match up to it. And I don't know if I speak for the rest of the class, but what do you have to say, Steve? And this was your first time seeing this one, right?
Yeah, for no particular reason. I just hadn't seen this movie. It's always been on that list of movies you always hear about that you have to watch. So I'm glad that I had to watch it for this conversation. I really enjoyed it, man. I thought it was great. I thought it was simple storytelling, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just very simple, to the point, easy to follow. We always say it's conservative filmmaking in the sense of you're not wasting people's time. You're in and out in about an hour and a half. And it's just, it looks sharp. That's one of the things that just struck me, is that even though it's an older film and it's in black and white, because sometimes black and white films can look kind of grainy and kind of don't really hold up well, and whatever.
I agree.
This just looks sharp. It looks clean. Yeah, everything looked purposeful. It was just a really nice, well put together package.
Well said.
And what do you think? Because you also hadn't seen this one before, but had you heard of it before?
I heard of the 2008 version when it came out. I was living overseas in Canada, and I heard about it, and I knew it was a science fiction movie, and I'm not really inclined to watch those kind of movies, so I heard about it, but I wasn't really interested, and I didn't know that it was a remake. I didn't know it was a movie from the 50s, because when it's a remake, I'm always curious, so maybe I would have watched it at that time. But I will say quite the same as Steve said, because I was really surprised about this movie. I don't like black and white movies. So once again, I thought, oh my God, Peter wants me to watch a black and white movie again. But actually, it was a very good surprise. And technically speaking, I was really surprised. Because once again, I think it's not the first time I said that in our podcast.
See, Anne, I think you need to start saying, I used to not be a fan of black and white movies.
That's true.
I used to not be a fan of science fiction movies. I used to not be a fan of horror movies.
Well, let's look at that for a second. Anne, what is it about the black and white movie?
I like the colors.
Because I have a theory about what turns it off for me in certain cases. Okay. I know for me, if I'm watching a black and white movie, and you can't argue that she likes the colors. But if I'm watching a black and white film and it's grainy and the sound is staticky and everything's just like, it just looks like it's a million years old.
Exactly right.
It's so distracting to me. It takes me. There's a disconnect for me. But this was so sharp, so clear. Again, like Psycho was the same. 9 years later, but still very sharp, very clear. I think that's part of the thing that turns some people off, is it looks old and feels old, and the quality is not great, and you feel a disconnect from the material right off the bat. It's almost like a barrier, at least for me. So the fact that we put this on, and it was super clear and everything was just clean and crisp and sounded good and shot well, it's like, yeah, got it. I'm locked in. So that, for me, I think that's part of it. I know if that was part of your apprehension going in.
It's exactly that. For me, watching a black and white movie, it's like watching a dusty thing, and you don't see the nuances. If you watch a sunrise in black and white, there is no point. I mean, so that's the thing. But I agree with you on the fact that this movie, especially the shadows and everything, and you said that in the VHS bit, but the shadows, you see see the difference between light and dark sides and things like that. So yeah, this movie is an exception. That's the thing. You made me watch exceptions, but when I watch black and white movies, most of the times,
no, I don't. And have you ever seen like Nosferatu, the original.
No, you know I haven't watched that.
The Okay, well, yeah, it's a silent film, and there's a sunrise at the end of it. And I don't think the absence of color affects the impact of that image in black and white.
Okay, good to know. I'll have a look.
Throwing down the gauntlet.
So I think black and white is a state of mind that people it is kind of a roadblock. I understand what Steve is saying, but sometimes, it could be as simple as the copy that you're watching, because especially coming from like physical media background where it's like, oh, I'm going to go to the video store and I'm going to rent this old movie. And it's like, well, that's like a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yeah.
Or that transfer wasn't preserved well. And so now there's a lot of films that are digitally remastered and 4K scans of the, whatever. And it's like, oh, well, now, yeah, these movies like Night of the Living Dead is you watch the remaster of that, but that movie was in public domain and it got, like bootleg to hell, like there's like blurry, like it looks almost like you're watching it through like a Vaseline screen. It's so wavy and blurry, but then you watch, a nice remastered reissue of it. It's like, oh my goodness, this is like, I'm back in the theater. And so I don't know that that's necessarily across the board true what you said, but I understand where you're coming from. For me, I've never been opposed to black and white, probably because I grew up watching a lot of black and white and even black and white TV. Like when I was a kid, Nickelodeon, the channel, had Nick at Night, and they would play the shows from the 50s. So I would watch Mr. Ed and Car 54, Where Are You? And the Donna Reed Show. And these were all Dobie Gillis and Dick Van Dyke. And
I grew up on the Honeymooners, so
the Honeymooners, yeah, they weren't on Nick at Night, but they were on late night after Cheers. So, on WPIX.
Good old WPIX.
Yeah. So, but what I'm getting at is I've never been opposed to it because I've always been exposed to it. So for me, it's like never even a question or a hurdle or a roadblock in any way. And you know what? In the series of VHS, like, well, we've watched It's a Wonderful Life, Psycho. On the Waterfront, Psycho, Seven Samurai, City Lights. Yeah, and I'm sure there's another black and white in there somewhere. And how many of those did you not like, Anne?
Those are exceptions.
Well, there's plenty more where they came from. But I do agree that the cinematography in this film, to get back on point, is really remarkable. And if you do look at other Robert Wise films, The Body Snatcher from 1945, starring Boris Karloff, and if you check out that film, it's really, again, you can just see the quality of his storytelling, but visually in a black and white setting, it's pretty spectacular.
Add it to the list.
And this film really is no exception. I love the shots when he's in the elevator with Helen, like the lighting and that when the power goes out and they're just in there, but like they got that cross lighting in the elevator. It's like, oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Technically speaking, this movie is really well done, but it's surprising to see that in the 50s, the special effects are as good as nowadays. And even sometimes nowadays you watch movies, the special effects are really worse than this one, because I think the reason is because nowadays we want to do everything with computers, and you can see that sometimes simple is best, and it shows in this movie. Not everything is perfect in this movie if we're really truly honest, but when you think it was made in 51, I mean, it's really surprising to see how it looks so good, so realistic. And just maybe you won't agree on that, but the spaceship for me looks really great. Outside, inside, it's better than my apartment. I would like to have that in my apartment, really.
I was surprised about how straight those lines were when that door reveals itself and it slides forward.
It comes out of nowhere.
Crazy. Yeah, that was.
It's so smooth and so slick. I mean, it's just fiberglass. It's just a fiberglass set, and like if you were to walk behind it, it would be two by fours, like your basic, like just facade. But
Mhm.
I believe they put like putty over the seams to just make it seem like it would come out of nowhere. And then when it went back, it just the like crack reconnected,
Yeah.
but they just filled in the crack enough. So yeah, it's so beautiful. It's downright sexy, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree.
It
It
really
is.
is.
To Anne's point too, the fact that this was 51, I think the strength here was that they didn't overdo. They didn't go, try to, reach too far out of their means, and I think they picked their spots well, and they kept it simple, and that's that's all you need, and all the effects were effective because of that.
The topics also covered really surprised me. When you think it was just after World War II, they talk about things that even nowadays sometimes we
Hmm.
don't dare to talk about. And talking about the threat of global destruction just after the war they had really surprised me. I was surprised it was a this movie was a success. I don't know if it was a success at first when it came out, but because I imagine the audience, they just lived through hell and now they have a movie talking about a biggest hell. You know what I'm saying? That the earth could be, I mean,
Mhm.
the humanity on earth could be destroyed by someone from another planet. So I don't know, I was surprised about that. I don't know how you think about this topic.
I think it was gutsy. It's a gutsy move to put something out like that, to say, basically, as one of the messages in the film, get it together or you're going to get taken out. Like, figure out a way to work together, and the fact that you can't even come together to have a dialogue or hear what somebody has to say for your all of your own good is a detriment. So, get it together, stop fighting, otherwise we're going to have to eliminate you.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's that blunt. I mean, it's more that just ignorance and pride and ego are a detriment to any
Hmm.
situation. And it really is, it does the sci-fi thing where it takes, the allegoric turn, and it takes this real life situation and drops it into this fantastic setting. But this one hits a little bit different because of how directly focused it is, and I think because of the time period in which it was made. Because as I said, yeah, it's right after World War II, but it is smack in the middle of the Korean War that was in full swing, and then also the Cold War was taking off. I mean, Sam Jaffe, who played Dr. Barnard, he was blacklisted. He was part of those McCarthy hearing witch
Wow.
hunts. And he got the part because the producer was like, no, he's the actor I want. I don't give a shit about his politics. I give a shit about his ability to do his job. So he kind of went out on a limb to just even have that guy involved, and he does a great job. He's supposed to be this Einstein-esque character, and he's got a little bit of the resemblance going with the hair and everything, but
I'm sorry, I'm curious about that because that's something I heard, but I don't know much about it. So, yeah, people suspected of communism at that time. So they were blacklisted in Hollywood. But how was the audience reaction? Seeing a guy suspected of communism in a movie, is the audience is okay with that, or they didn't know about that? I don't know how it was.
yeah, I think it was more like a case by case thing, and how deeply you followed politics, but a lot of times people were just so worked up about that kind of a thing, and that's why they call them kind of like witch hunts, because it was just like fanaticism to an
Mhm.
extreme,
Mm.
and it really, a lot of it was unfounded, and a lot of it was also not not even applicable, but it was just a way to point the finger at something. So it's like a distraction. Like we're gonna point the finger over here so you don't see what we're doing over here. And if you ever, I mean, I know Steve is really a big fan of the movie The Majestic, and that film with Jim Carrey kind of delves into that a little bit because he's a screenwriter who's like on the line of being blacklisted. And I remember in that film, like, he's like, I went to those meetings because I was a horny young man. I just wanted to spend time with this girl, and that's why I was there. You got me,
Right.
and like I think that's the way it was for a lot of people. Like they were just seeing what was up, it was something to do at their university that night.
Yeah.
But it followed them. And then they wanted you to name names to like to get the heat off of you. So it was really just a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
Just another black eye on our civilization.
I had never, the fact that I've never seen this movie before, so I didn't know exactly what to expect. I was pleasantly surprised about how small the story was. I mean, it's, considering that the ramifications in the story are, grand.
Global.
Yeah. It was just really pulled in and really focused, and you got to really enjoy the characters and the relationships that start to form. I mean, Michael Rennie is awesome in this movie. I mean, this suave, good-looking guy, looks like the guy next door. And he just kind of floats through. Like when he first arrives at the house, and they're like, "Who is this man?" And then he steps out of the shadows, like, "Oh, he's handsome. It's okay.
Yeah.
You can have a room." It's like, but 2 seconds ago, he was a mystery. But when he's this good-looking, clean-cut guy, it's like, "Oh yeah, no problem. We can rent your room." I just, I thought he was, what a great performance. I can't say enough good things about him.
Oh, like I said, he's probably my favorite character of anything ever. And I'm not just saying that because this is the selection this month. Like, no, like Klaatu really is like above and beyond when you think about the character and what he represents, what he brings with him, and the way he carries himself. It's like, wow, that is phenomenal. Like, just like you're playing an alien, but you're not an alien, but you are an alien. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's that whole thing of like hiding in plain sight. And how well he does it. And there's so many little moments, like when when he takes Billy to see the UFO and the news reporter comes up to him and he starts talking and the reporter's like, "Wrong guy." "Okay, thank you very much, sir." And he like moves on down the line.
Yeah.
Or when Billy asks him like about inertia and he gives him like the total, technical explanation of what it is. And Billy's just like, "Huh."
Yeah.
Like that disconnect, but he's still connecting.
Yeah, it's genuine. Man, yeah, he's really good. And I know, and he's probably easy on the eyes, right? Tall drink of water.
Even in black
handsome,
and white.
Nice haircut, clean shaven,
Yeah, what I liked about his appearance is the fact that he looks human, but he looks different. You know what I'm saying? So he's an alien in the movie, but even the fact that he's tall and svelte, compared to the rest of the cast, he looks different. You know what I'm saying? So, and as you said, Pete, in the VHS, he's the definition of cool attitude. The way he talks, the way he looks, and I love the chemistry he has with the little Bobby. They're really cute together, I think. So yeah, I love this character. I read somewhere, I know you won't agree with that, but I read somewhere that some people says that he has a Christic attitude. The fact that he comes down to earth to teach humans what's going to happen, and he kind of resurrects in the movie. So, and I think his name is Carpenter in the movie also. So that's, people really focused on that. They said he has a Christic attitude. I don't know. But yeah, I love this character. Definitely the coolest guy.
That's definitely a theme that I didn't want to mention the VHS because I didn't want to like impede anybody's viewing of it and have them like look for it, you know.
Right.
But if it comes to you, it comes to you. But yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna deny that it's there, but I do know that they had to put in that line about you know, when he comes back from the dead and he says that's a power only for the Almighty. They
Yeah.
like the industry people, the studio said, you know, put that line in there because we don't want people to think that this is a, you know, Jesus,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, fable.
And that's something really exceptional. I don't know, maybe you have many examples, but for me, who don't like science fiction movies, I was surprised that actually the protagonist is the alien, is the invader. Uh, Usually, I feel that
Mhm.
human are against the invader. It makes sense because that's kind of a nature. We're against people invading us, but that's the opposite. The protagonist is the invader here, and I like this point of view. You know.
That's what struck me, you know, again, watching it the first time. I don't know what happens. When he steps off the ship and that guy just shoots him, I was like, oh boy, what's nothing more American than that? We're just jumping right in. Let's just
Exactly.
kill and shoot what we don't understand or what we're afraid of. I was like, holy shit. I was like, now they're gonna get it. Now the aliens gonna come down and murder them all. It was a sad commentary that's still kind of prevalent today in certain cases. But it was so cool that he just was like, okay, I put the salve on myself and I'll heal myself, and very understanding and almost like you guys are so primitive, so I'm going to take it easy on you.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, Gort stepped in right
well,
away
yeah,
and Klaatu put him in check. But I think the other interesting thing that's playing on that is, you know, there's that expression like a person is smart, people are dumb.
yeah,
You know, like as a group, it's that mob mentality of like, you know, we're all just going to follow the leader.
yeah,
And so having the protagonist be the outsider, then you get the audience as individuals connecting with that protagonist. It's like, oh yeah, no, he's right. And so I think that's something that maybe added to the success of it on like a psychological level, was like
mhm,
people found themselves identifying with and connecting with Klaatu because, you know, while we are a group and a, you know, species, we are all our own people. So
yeah.
you can have a conversation with a person, but talking to a crowd, yeah, you gotta have Gort in your corner, you know.
No, absolutely. I also find it very, um, I guess I don't say telling, but I love the fact that he learns more about the planet through Bobby than he does
Mm,
talking to any of the adults.
yeah.
And I think that's a really cool thing to have in this film. So that's like such an honest and natural and cool relationship. And then he like asks them the question about the cemetery, when did all these people die in wars, and and so he's really picking up on it because there's when you're a kid, there's an innocence
Yeah.
to everything, and there's no bullshit, there's no ego, there's no agenda.
But Bobby does know the value of a dollar.
That he does. That he does. But then he says, "I feel bad. Don't tell my mom 'cause I feel bad stealing from you." Um, so he's still honest in that
Yeah.
regard. But I thought that was a really nice angle for the movie to take. That's how he knew stuff about the planet, but he learns more of the intricacies through someone who has no agenda, no ego, and just being honest, and just wants to. He likes this guy.
Hmm. Yeah, and in the VHS, I made the comparison of this to like ET,
Hmm.
and again, like it's just the impact of this film. Like that's why I say it's like a quintessential must see sci-fi film, because when you get into it, and I even, you know, compared Klaatu to a early version of Mr. Spock. It's like the ripple effect of this story and these elements, not even the story, but just the elements that are present in the characters and in the characterization and in the technology and in the setup. It's like, wow, you know, like all the way up to like Futurama. Like Gort is really just a distant cousin to Bender.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like the robot character. Like,
Yeah.
wow. It's crazy. It's bananas when you think about it, when you go back and look at it. Because now that you guys have seen it, you're going to watch other films, maybe even films that you've seen, and you're like, oh, that's an echo from the day the earth stood still.
Yeah. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, you know, that funny that you say that. When I watch a sci-fi movie, I almost always love the robot android counterpart sidekick. You know, we talked about that in Interstellar. I love, you know,
Yeah.
those guys, R2D2 and 3PO. I mean, come on, you know. So yeah, I'm always partial to the robot android character type.
Yeah. And Gort has like no lines.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. When you think about it, he doesn't say anything, but actually he says a lot, because I like the fact that he's just reacting to defend, not to attack. And also the fact that violence create violence. If you're violent to him, he's gonna be violent to you. And I think that's when you understand that, you understand everything. Because one of the topic of the film also is that how to resolve conflicts peacefully. That's also, or to prevent conflicts. So that's one of the main topics. So this character is the definition of it, and I like that. The weak point about Gort is about the special effect, I would say. I know you were super enthusiastic talking about Gort, the fact that the actor is a very tall guy, and yeah, the fact that the costume he wears and everything, but the costume doesn't look real. I mean, it doesn't look like a robot, in my opinion. It makes me think of a, I don't know if you have that in America, Playmobil. You know what I'm saying? Like a Lego. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, that's
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
probably the only thing I didn't like about Gort.
Yeah, when he's walking around and you can see the wrinkles like in his legs where his knees are bending, it's like, I
Yeah.
wish even if they had like some kind of a joint hinge thing like the Tin Man,
Yeah.
you know, like that. But I think they just wanted him to be like super sleek, just like the spaceship, you know, like they wanted him to look like the personification of the ship, like because they even say like he's made of the same material, like they can't penetrate it, you know.
Yeah.
So they were going for that idea and that aesthetic, but I don't think that we as a people we're there yet, because yeah, and you can just do it with CGI now, you know, like they did in the remake.
Yeah. But I love the scene with Patricia Neal, when she meets him, and you know she's supposed to calm him down. She takes so much time to say the line, you know. so we're thinking that she's gonna die, and I was like, tell him. But she took so many times. But I guess she was frightened.
Yeah, that's the thing, like it's that whole like audience yelling at the screen thing, you know. You see it in horror movies now, and here it was in 1951. Like you get the audience riled up and on the edge of their seats, where it's like they're participating now, they're fearful. And yeah, her character really is just in shock, because she just saw Gort like take out those guards and like, you know, escape from that little prison they put him in. Like he's coming after me. It's like, what, you know, you're a deer in the headlights, you freeze. And so I think it was played beautifully and executed to perfection in terms of a narrative, you know, like element for the story.
Yeah. It definitely had you like on the edge of your seat. There was some good suspense in this, you know, in that cab, and every time they pass another jeep full of soldiers and another one, and they're all giving them, you know, the evil eye. It's like, oh boy, you better hit the gas, pal, and get there, because it's going to be trouble soon. But yeah, I like movies like that you get invested, and you want the characters to succeed, and you're worried about them. And I feel like sometimes you don't get that anymore, at least in that way. You know, everything's so contrived, and you know,
And drawn out.
yeah, it's like this was effective. It was
It's
simple and it was effective.
it's a little insane when you think about it, you know, just in terms of like how efficient It is. How well it was executed, how efficiently it was told, and how, like, I don't want to say perfect, but the performances really are fantastic. Like, they are very strong characters and then very, very strong performances in this film that just, again, bring you right in. And it really, a lot of it rests on Michael Rennie, and a good amount of it rests on Gort, because if Gort really didn't work, the movie would have fallen apart. But I think just the way he's introduced, and with that cue in the score from Bernard Herrmann, just that dun, 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 you know, like he's just there, and then he starts like melting tanks.
Yeah.
Like, I'm paying attention. The score in this film really is very, very, like, for the time especially, very groundbreaking. But I mean, it's just, I think it kind of reinvented the idea of what a score could be and what a score could do to a story.
Yeah, I mean, I love the music in this movie. They're super effective. Um, I was surprised to see Bernard Herrmann's name. Just I wasn't expecting it, you know. And he's gone to do some massive films, you know, in his career. But yeah, this is a really cool entry, and it made just it made me think of. It's funny because it's right behind your head there, but it made me think of Ed Wood, and it made me think of Plan 9 and all those movies from that time period. But yeah, I thought the score was great.
Yeah, and I really do think it's great because I didn't really notice it. So that's a good thing for music in a movie. I was so absorbed about the story that so it matches really well with the screen because I didn't really notice that. And then I re-listened to the VHS and I noted that you talked specifically about it, and that made me wonder why I didn't really put so much attention, because usually I put attention on the music, and it's because it matched really well the screen. So yeah, I cannot say that I loved it because I don't really remember it, but I was really into the story. But it's a good compliment, I guess, for someone who write who compose music for a movie, to say that you didn't notice the music. It's a good compliment.
I think that's a very correct statement. You know, like there's a lot of like dead air in the film. There's a lot of like blank space in the soundtrack where, like, for example, when he borrows Bobby's flashlight and he goes to the ship, you know, in the middle of the night, there's no dialogue. It's kind of a shadow sequence, you know, where Bobby's following him and he's up to no good. But the music, it's mysterious. It's like it's tapping into different things. It's not telling you to be scared, and it's not telling you to, like, you know, cry. It's telling you to, like, follow. It's really kind of cool.
Yeah.
The way he's doing it. And then even just utilizing the score in terms of like sound effects, you know, which happens a few times, or using just music to create those sounds on the spaceship. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I like when music complement. It's a nice marriage. The music and the imagery should be a nice marriage. And you should say to yourself, "Oh yeah, well that makes sense. That
Yeah.
goes together." And
It's not overbearing.
fighting.
It's not overpowering. It's just it's telling the story.
Helen Benson, the mother, she is the link between the human and what the human should be like. Give a chance to the invader, listen to what he has to say. Maybe he can say something that serves us. You know, she's the link between these two types, between Klaatu and Tom Stevens. I think he's the archetype of human being. You know, he thinks of his self-interest first, and he doesn't think about the consequences. He doesn't even consider the opinion of his loved ones. So I suggest that he didn't really love her. That's my opinion. But yeah, I think he's the human side of the story.
Well, that's the funny thing, right? Because Klaatu is less of a threat than Tom. You know, like when you think about it, like he doesn't care about the kid. Let the kid go with the stranger. I know times were a little bit different back then, also, but yeah, I get it, And he's focused on the diamond, right? He's like, I went to 3 different places, and they said like he just focused on and then he's like, we got to turn this guy in. It's all about like I'll be a hero. It's like
Yeah.
It's all like get rid of the kid so we can go on the date. Let's I'm gonna keep this diamond because it's there's no price tag on this thing, and then I'm gonna turn this guy in. I'm gonna be the big hero. Like doesn't care
Yeah.
about anybody else but his own interests. And effectively, if he got away with what he wanted to do, he could have ruined everything for everybody. And he didn't care what happened to his love interest, or it's like it's almost like the worst of humanity on display.
Yeah, he's the personification of everything that Klaatu was talking about at the end. It's like, listen, you guys are just about to be able to like do some stuff, and as long as you do it here, that's fine. But if you bring that shit to our door,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to deal with Gort. And I love the simplicity
Yeah.
of it. It all comes back to, it's like, wow. Like, I remember when I first saw this movie, and like I said, like, it didn't take me long to like realize how awesome it was. But when I got to the end, and it was like, it was that simple, and it was there the whole time,
Yeah.
and he just got his chance to say it, and then he bounced. It's like, whoa, what a mic drop,
How old are you when you saw this?
I was probably about 22, 21, 22 when I first saw it. And then from that first viewing, I was like, wow, this might be one of my favorite films ever. And it's held up over the last like 20 or so years. Like I don't watch it as like, I haven't seen it as many times as I've seen other films, but I've maybe seen it like 10 times over the 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's no less impactful, and it's no worse for wear. And I'll sit down with anybody any day of the week to watch it because it is just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I'm glad you guys checked it out.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you recommended it. I love sci-fi. I'm a big Twilight Zone guy, and yeah, this was like right up my alley. So yeah, I'm glad I watched it.
But I'm surprised about the title. I think I was a bit reluctant about the title. The Day the Earth Stood Still. It's a very long title, and it's like, okay, so the
Is.
planet's gonna stop, and an alien will come to arrange things or whatever. I didn't know what to expect because of the title. And actually, I love the title. I think it's a very good one, but I'm surprised it's so long because of marketing. You think that it has to be straight to the point, and you know what I'm saying, that it has to be effective for the audience.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a very long title, but it's a very evocative title. Like there's a lot of mystery involved in it, as you just explained. So it's like, ooh, well, whoa, why? What do you mean? And as you go through the movie, like there's metaphorical stopping, like everybody stops and listens at the end, and everybody stops when the UFO arrives. It's like, oh shit, like what's going on? Everybody stops and drops what they're doing and goes to the ball field to stare at the UFO. And then it literally stops when Klaatu like drops the hammer there and just lets everybody know what time it is. So yeah, it's I think it is a long title, but I think it's a great title.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, it attracts an audience, and I think that's the real brilliance of it. It's like, oh, what just the way people in the movie are like, what's going on over there? I feel like people are like, well, what's going on in there? What's going on in that movie theater?
Right. I mean, for me, I think I agree with both of you. I think that it's a bold title, right? So the day the earth stood still. It's kind of like mysterious and like you said, what's going on in that story?
And dramatic.
Mm-hmm. But I also feel like it's kind of a product of its time, like in that pulpy camp, like 50s sci-fi sort of way. And dare I say, that might be the most dated thing about the movie when you think about it, because all the messages in there are unfortunately still kind of prevalent today. So yeah, that might be, aside from maybe some of the clothes and the haircuts, that might be the most dated thing about the film, is that title from that era. But
right, but they
And that's not a
used
bad
it.
thing.
They used it again in the remake, though. Like they didn't change the title. Like sometimes they'll change
Right.
the title, and I know that they've made like B-movie versions where it's like the day the Earth stopped. Or like
Right.
the day the planet stopped. That's an actual that's an actual title of a movie. That's kind of a B-movie knockoff of this, but for the remake they kept the title, and so I don't know that it's necessarily a dated thing. Because yeah, like I said in the video as well, I don't think they succeeded with their mission of conveying this message, because we're still dealing with a lot of
Yeah.
these problems, and they're still bickering and fighting and politics and bureaucracy and red tape and nonsense that really doesn't matter. It really like the shit people are fucking arguing about is so asinine on so many different levels, because none of it means a fucking thing when you're in the box. When the curtain drops and you're in the box, that's fucking it, I love when Klaatu says, we've managed to rise above these trivialities and we've been able to pursue greater things. That's why he has a fucking salve that he can rub on a
Yeah.
bullet wound and heal in a day, because they've focused on their medical technology. And that's why their currency is diamonds, because they've risen above the trivialities of paper, and fibers and all this other rigmarole bullshit that like we just can't get fucking past. So I love this movie.
Nah, really?
Pete for president. We want you to be president.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a great movie. I'm gonna have to add it to my collection now. My ever-growing physical media collection. Pete, you're just making me buy movies now, man. I already have a problem buying movies, and now you're just adding to it.
Well, then the system works. I'm curious, Steven, have you seen the remake?
No, I was looking for it the other night, and then I couldn't find any place that had it streaming, so I just gave up and was like, "Oh, fuck it."
I know that when it was announced that it was coming out, I wasn't terribly excited, and I like Keanu, but I love Jennifer Connelly.
Oh, me too.
And you've recently watched it.
Yeah, I watch it to prepare this podcast. So and it's a different movie for me. It's the same title, the same name for the characters, but the story is quite different. What I loved in the first movie is the fact that, as I said, that the fact that the invader is the protagonist, the alien is the protagonist, which is not really the true the thing in the 2008 version. For me, the protagonist is Jennifer Connelly. Everything is around her from the beginning. The beginning of the story is her. It's really the opposite of the first movie, where, as we said, it's a simple story. You get into it really easily. You get attached to the characters easily. It's not the case in the remake.
All right, so we agree that the original was excellent across the board: story, performance, directing, casting, everything, right? And that the story was excellent because it was so simple and because it was so focused. And so now you're saying the remake is convoluted and kind of the opposite. So what was the point of the remake? Like, even just in terms of the narrative, like what were they trying to convey? Because we know that in the original, they're trying to convey like, stop fucking each other over, like learn to live side by side, let shit go, don't be so petty, don't be so ignorant, And so what's the message in the remake then? Because I don't remember, and I'm not going to rewatch it.
That's a good question, because at the end, so I'm spoiling the end, but you understand that Klaatu wants to destroy humans being on Earth because they're destroying everything. So I don't know. He changes his mind at the end, because I'm not going to tell you all the story, but at the end, so Jennifer Connelly is infected by Gort, because Gort can spread, and he transformed as mosquitoes, and those mosquitoes infected Jennifer Connelly, so she's dying. And suddenly we notice that Jaden Smith is infected too, and is dying too. And Jennifer Connelly begs Klaatu, she says, "Save him, not me, but save him." And because of that, Klaatu decides to change his mind because he sees humanity, and he sees that even if most humans, they're destroying themselves, some of them they can sacrifice for others. So he's surprised and he's touched, and so he decides to change his mind and to leave the world as it is. So the end is really weird, but that's
I'm 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 pretty sure that it sounded better on paper.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't seen this remake, but I'll tell you what it sounds like to me. It sounds like this movie, the remake, didn't have any of the charm of the first
but
of the original.
I know to
film.
answer
And
your
we're-
question.
We're doing mosquitoes now. Like, what are we doing?
But to answer your question, I know what they wanted to make a remake. It's because of the CGI. I think they thought they could do better in terms of special effects, and they wanted to give it a try. Because to be honest with you, Gort is really impressive in the second one, in the remake. There's a real difference, but it serves the story well. I mean, Gort is really impressive, really massive. He reacts to violence a way that is becoming bigger and stronger. And yeah, he can transform into mosquitoes. It's a bit weird, but you see the threat through Gort in the remake, which is not really the case in the first one. That's what I said. I was a bit not disappointed, but you see that it's not realistic Gort in the first one.
Yeah, but it's not without its charm either. And if you're watching it like, okay, this movie was made in 1951, it really, for that time, it holds up, I think, and it's right on par, with what was going down at that time in terms of filmmaking and storytelling and those kinds of characters. But I don't know, just why do you have to make a whole movie, spend millions of dollars, on a you can make a Super Bowl ad and just put a new Gort in there. It's like, oh shit, that's sick, and like it makes it relevant again, and then people go check out the old movie that you've already made, and you continue to rake in cash. You don't have to go through all that trouble of making a box office flop and like losing money on the deal.
But maybe
Well, I think part of it is a question that was raised earlier was like, well, they didn't change the name. Why didn't they change the name? It's name recognition,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a quick buck. Oh, well, if
Oh, well,
somebody doesn't
that's
like black and white, but they recognize the title, like, oh, well,
yeah.
it's a modern version of that movie. I'll watch that.
That's that's a big part of it too. And it's like, oh well, we already own this story.
Mhm.
Let's just make a new version.
This is part of the problem I have fundamentally with remakes. It's like if the movie is close to perfect or whatever, and it's so popular or so strong that you feel like an inclination to make the remake, don't. Because
Mhm.
if you feel it's so good, we should tell this again, don't. Just put it back into the theaters. Take a movie that wasn't so great and say maybe we could fix
Yeah.
this and work this out. And that's a fundamental problem. That's why I don't watch a lot of remakes, or at least I try not to watch a lot of remakes, because I'm like, well, I really like that movie, man. What are you going to improve upon?
No, I think you're right. I mean, it's number crunchers in an office in Hollywood thinking they're clever,
Mhm.
and they're not.
yeah.
That'll about do it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Selects podcast. We will be discussing a completely different film next time, so make sure you head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future selections. You can catch Stephen Bendler over on Instagram at Steve's Pop Culture Corner, and I, of course, are also on Instagram as well as Letterboxd, so you can follow us over there and find out what we've been watching and see what we think. And until next time, Klaatu Barada Nikto.